The cold hit Jarvis the moment the automatic doors slid open. Not the polite kind of cold you get in an office building. The hard kind. The kind that had teeth. The kind that reminded you that Winnipeg in November didn't care who you were or what you'd done for your country. He stepped inside the terminal and let the doors close behind him. Beside him, Boone moved without a sound. 80 pounds of black and tan German shepherd, his eyes already reading the room before Jarvis had taken his second step. That was the thing about Boone. He never needed to be told. He just worked. Jarvis shifted the duffel strap on his shoulder and kept walking. 14 days of leave, that was what they'd given him. 2 weeks to be a civilian again. He'd decided to fly home to see his mother in Thunder Bay. His first visit in nearly 2 years. He hadn't called ahead. He never did. She'd cry either way. The Winnipeg James Armstrong Richardson International Airport was busier than he expected for a Tuesday morning. School groups, business, travelers. A family struggling with a stroller and 3 bags, and a toddler who had opinions about all of it. Jarvis stepped around them without breaking stride and found the check-in area. He joined the line. Boone sat without being asked, his shoulder touching Jarvis's left leg. This was the thing about 14 years in the Navy. 14 years of being somewhere loud, somewhere dangerous, somewhere that required absolute stillness in your own mind. You stopped needing to think about the small things. You just moved through space. Quietly, without friction. Until someone decided you were the friction. The woman at the check-in counter had a name tag that said Loretta. She had reading glasses on a chain around her neck, and the look of someone who had been doing this job long enough to have stopped finding any of it interesting. She processed Jarvis's documents without looking up. Then she looked up. She saw Boone. "Sir." Her voice had a different quality now. Not unfriendly. Careful. "Is that an animal?" "He is," Jarvis said. "Is he? What is he traveling as?" "Emotional support or service animal. Military working dog, currently on leave with his handler." Jarvis reached into his jacket pocket and placed the documentation on the counter. He'd learned to have it ready. He always had it ready. Loretta looked at the papers. She looked at Boone. She looked at Jarvis's jacket, the one that didn't say anything, because Jarvis didn't wear the kind of jacket that said things. "One moment," she said, and picked up her phone. Jarvis waited. Boone waited. This was also something they had in common. The man who arrived 3 minutes later walked like he owned the floor he was standing on. Compact. Mid-40s. Hair slicked back hard enough to reflect the terminal lighting. His jacket had Airport Authority on the chest in yellow letters, and underneath that, in smaller text, the name. Neil looked at Jarvis. Neil looked at Boone. Neil did not look at the documentation. "This your dog?" "Yes," Jarvis said. "Big dog, yes. We have policies about animals in the terminal." Neil crossed his arms. "I'm going to need to see some documentation before we can allow." "It's on the counter," Jarvis said. "She has it." Neil looked at Loretta. Loretta held up the papers. Neil did not take them. "I'd like to see your veterinary records as well. Vaccination history. We're going to need to verify. It's in the documentation." "Sir." Neil's voice dropped half a register, the kind of drop that was supposed to communicate authority. "I understand you may not be familiar with how this process works, but I am the head of passenger services for this terminal, and I am telling you that we have a verification process for all animals on these premises. And that process takes time, and during that time I'm going to need to ask you and your," he gestured at Boone in a way that managed to be dismissive, "animal to step aside and wait in the designated area near Gate C. My flight board's in 40 minutes. Jarvis said. "That," Neil said, "is not my concern." People in the surrounding lines had started to look. Jarvis was aware of them the way he was aware of everything. Peripherally, catalogued, filed. A man in a gray suit with a coffee cup. A teenager with headphones around her neck. An older woman in a red coat who had stopped pretending to look at her boarding pass. Jarvis looked at Neil for a moment. He thought about the 14 years. He thought about the places those years had taken him, the things he had done in them, The people he had brought home safe, and the ones he hadn't. He thought about his mother in Thunder Bay, who still kept a photo of him in his dress uniform on the mantel, even though he'd asked her 3 times to take it down. He picked up his documentation from the counter. "Where's Gate C?" he said. The designated area near Gate C turned out to be a row of hard plastic chairs, beside a pillar that partially blocked the view of the departures board. There was a garbage bin nearby and a vending machine that hummed at a frequency that made the back of Jarvis's teeth ache. He sat. Boone sat beside him. A woman with 2 small children took the seats at the far end of the row, glanced at Boone, and instinctively moved her youngest slightly closer to her. Jarvis understood. He didn't take it personally. 20 minutes passed. Neil did not come back. Jarvis checked the departures board when it was visible around the pillar. His flight was still listed, still on time, still boarding in 20 minutes. He went back to the check-in counter. Different agent this time. Young man, barely 20, with the look of someone 3 months into a job that was already teaching him things about people that no one had warned him about. "I need to complete my check-in," Jarvis said. "I was told to wait near Gate K.O." The young man looked at the screen, looked at Jarvis's ID. "I don't see. I mean, your file has a hold on it." "I know." Neil put it there. "Right. So I'd need to get him to my flight boards in 20 minutes. The young man looked genuinely pained. "I understand that, sir. I'm really sorry. I can't clear a hold without. Is there a supervisor I can speak to?" That would be Neil. There it was. Jarvis stood at the counter for a moment. He kept his breathing even. He'd been in rooms, actual rooms, not airports, rooms where the stakes of losing your composure were measured in something other than a missed flight. And he had stayed even. He could stay even here. "Can you call him?" Jarvis said. The young man called. Neil appeared 4 minutes later with the energy of someone who had been interrupted doing something important and wanted you to know it. "Sir, I thought I told you to wait." "My flight board's in 15 minutes, Jarvis said. "I have valid documentation. I have a valid ticket. I'd like to check in. And I told you we have a process. What part of the process is outstanding?" Jarvis said. "Specifically." Neil blinked. "Excuse me? You said verification." "The documentation is verified. It's on government letterhead with a certification number you can call. You said vaccination records. They're in the packet. You said it takes time. It's been 35 minutes. Jarvis kept his voice level. "What specifically is still outstanding?" Neil's jaw moved slightly. "The dog needs to be assessed by our animal handling officer." "You have an animal handling officer?" "We do. Where are they?" A pause. Is she in this building?" "She's," Neil pulled out his radio, said something into it. Waited. Something came back that Jarvis couldn't quite hear, but he could read Neil's face. Whatever came back was not what Neil wanted. "She's at lunch," Neil said. "She's at lunch. She'll be back in. My flight board's in 12 minutes, Jarvis said. Beside him, Boone had been very still. That particular stillness that Jarvis knew, the one that wasn't rest, the one that was attention. Boone's head had turned slightly, his nose lifted just a degree off-center, directed at something past Jarvis's left shoulder, past the vending machine, past the pillar, toward the uncollected baggage storage alcove. Jarvis noticed. He didn't show that he noticed. "I'll tell you what," Neil said, his voice acquiring a new quality, the quality of someone who has decided to escalate. "I'm going to ask you one more time, politely, to step back to the designated area. If you refuse, I'm going to contact airport security and have them escort you and your animal out of the terminal, at which point your ticket will be flagged, and you will need to rebook through our special circumstances desk, which has a 48-hour processing window." He paused, letting that settle. "That's your choice." The older woman in the red coat, who had drifted closer to the counter over the last few minutes, spoke up. "That's not right," she said. She said it the way people who have raised children say things, as a simple statement of fact, not a challenge. "That man has his papers. I've been watching this whole thing and he has his papers, and you've had him sitting in a plastic chair for half an hour for no reason." "Ma'am," Neil said, "this is not your—" "My son is RCMP," she said, "and my granddaughter trains service animals, so I know what documentation looks like, and I know what his documentation looks like, and I'd like to know what specifically, as he said, is still outstanding." Neil looked at her the way people look at unexpected obstacles. And Boone moved. Not toward Neil. Not toward anyone. He went to the left, around the pillar, toward the baggage alcove. His movement was fluid and purposeful, the particular gait of a dog who is no longer watching, but following. His nose dropped to the floor, then came up, then dropped again, reading something in the air that had layers in it, layers that human senses would never find without instruments. "Hey," Neil pointed. "Your dog Boone," Jarvis said. Boone did not come back. In 14 years, Boone had not disobeyed a recall command. Not once. Not in training. Not in any of the places they'd been together that Jarvis didn't name in conversation. Jarvis felt something shift in the base of his chest. He turned and followed the dog. The alcove was a recessed area behind a set of retractable barriers, the kind used to manage crowds during peak boarding periods. Right now the barriers were partially extended, creating a makeshift corridor leading to a row of shelving units where unchecked and oversized baggage was stored pending collection. 3 suitcases, a golf bag and a travel cover, 2 cardboard boxes strapped with plastic banding, and, wedged between the second shelving unit and the wall, a hiking backpack in dark green. Boone was sitting in front of it, not barking, not pawing. Sitting, perfectly still, his eyes on the backpack, his posture the exact posture that Jarvis had spent 3 years watching in the field. The passive alert said, "I found it. Your move." Jarvis stopped. He did not touch the bag. He turned back. Neil was standing at the edge of the alcove, his arms still crossed, his expression working its way from irritated to uncertain. "There is a bag in this alcove," Jarvis said, "that my dog has indicated on." Indicated. He's trained in explosive detection. That's his alert posture. He is indicating on that green backpack. Neil stared at him. "You need to call your security team right now," Jarvis said. "And you need to call the RCMP right now. And you need to get the people in this terminal away from this area." "Sir, Neil," Jarvis said the name quietly. "The way you say something once, in a particular register, when you need someone to hear it past whatever story they're telling themselves. I don't know who left that bag or what's in it. But I know what my dog's alert looks like. I know it because I've seen it in real situations. Not simulations, real situations, and every single time I have seen that posture, the threat has been real." He paused. Every single time. Something moved behind Neil's eyes. The certainty cracked, just slightly, the way ice cracks before it gives. "I'll need to verify." "Call your security team," Jarvis said. "Do it right now. You can verify everything you want after." There are moments in ordinary life when time does a strange thing. It doesn't slow down exactly. It clarifies. Every detail becomes precise and separate. The sound of the PA system announcing a gate change, the smell of coffee from a kiosk 30 meters away, the way the fluorescent light above the alcove flickered once and held. These are the moments that some people never experience, and some people spend their whole lives running from, and some people, a very particular kind of people, have been trained to live inside of it. Jarvis lived. He moved away from the alcove. Not running. Moving. He went to the woman in the red coat, who had followed the situation as far as the pillar and was watching with the particular alertness of someone who has decided they're not leaving. "What's your name?" he said. "Barbara," she said. "Barbara, I need you to do something for me. I need you to go to the people in those seats, that whole row, and the row behind it, and I need you to tell them there's a gas leak and they need to move toward the main entrance. Can you do that?" Barbara looked at him. One beat. "Yes," she said. "Thank you." She went. She did it calmly, the way some people in a crisis simply do things, without drama, without explanation, without needing to understand the full picture before they act. Jarvis went to the young man at the check-in counter. "Lock your counter," he said. "Go to your break room. Don't come out until someone official tells you it's clear." The young man, whose name tag said Rien, looked at Jarvis, looked at the alcove, looked at Barbara already moving through the seating area, speaking quietly to people who were quietly getting up. Ryan locked his counter and went. Jarvis went back to the alcove entrance. Neil was on his radio. His voice had lost its earlier quality entirely. He was talking fast, using codes, his free hand pressed flat against the side of his head, as if he could push the words out faster. He looked at Jarvis once. He didn't say anything. He looked back at the alcove. Boone was still sitting, still looking at the bag, still perfectly, absolutely still. This is the thing that most people don't understand about military working dogs. They are not aggressive. They are not weapons, not in the way people imagine. They are instruments of extraordinary precision, trained to find what human eyes cannot, and then to wait, to hold the information without releasing it into chaos, to stay steady until the people around them catch up. Boone waited. Jarvis stood at the alcove entrance and watched the terminal. He watched Barbara move through the seating area and watched people get up, unhurried, carrying their bags, moving toward the exits. He watched a father take a child's hand without the child knowing why. He watched a teenager look up from her phone, read the movement of the room, and follow without needing to be told. 11 minutes after Neil called, the RCMP Explosives Disposal Unit came through the terminal doors. The lead officer was a woman in her 40s named Sergeant Maureen Patel. She took one look at Boone's posture and said, crisply and without ceremony, "Clear the area back 200 meters. She said it to Neil, who by now has watched his own certainty get stripped back layer by layer and found something cold underneath. Neil cleared the area. Jarvis was asked to leash Boone and step back. He did. Boone came on the leash without resistance, though he looked back once at the bag, the way a professional glances back at work left unfinished. They waited behind the security cordon. Barbara was there. She had a coffee. Someone had brought her a coffee from somewhere, and she was holding it in both hands, watching the doors to the alcove with the expression of someone who has decided that this was a significant Tuesday. "Tuesday? He found it, didn't he?" she said. Not a question. "Yes," Jarvis said. "How did you know? I mean, how do you know with the dog? What does it look like?" Jarvis thought about how to explain it to someone who had never seen it. "He sits," he said. "That's it. He doesn't bark, doesn't dig at it, doesn't alert loudly. He just sits and looks at it, still as anything, like he's telling you, 'I found what you were looking for. Now it's your turn.'" Barbara was quiet for a moment. "How long have you had him?" "6 years. And you trust him, "More than most people," Jarvis said. He wasn't sure if he meant it as a joke. He thought probably not. 43 minutes after the initial through the doors. She spoke briefly to the officers at the cordon, then walked directly to Jarvis. "Improvised device," she said. "Functional. Timer set." She paused. "Your dog found it with..." She looked at her watch, really 2 hours and 18 minutes on that timer. She said it the way you say something when you want the number to land. 2 hours and 18 minutes. Jarvis looked down at Boone. Boone looked back at him with the particular expression that dogs have when they've done what they were supposed to do and are now ready for what comes next. Patient, present, waiting. "Good boy," Jarvis said quietly. It was the only thing he could think of that came anywhere close to what he meant. Neil found Jarvis 20 minutes later, while the terminal was still partially cordoned, and passengers were being rerouted through the secondary entrance. He didn't come with his arms crossed. He didn't come with the voice he'd had before. He came like a man walking into a room he wasn't sure he deserved to be in. "I wanted to." He stopped, started again. "I owe you an apology." Jarvis looked at him. "I treated you badly," Neil said, "from the start. I didn't look at your documentation. I made assumptions. And his jaw Worked. I almost had security remove you from the building. If I had done that, he didn't finish it. You didn't, Jarvis said. But I coulda didn't, Jarvis said again. Neil, he had the look of a man rearranging something inside himself. Something structural, something that once you moved it, other things had to shift too. Is there anything? He started. My flight, Jarvis said. Neil blinked. Sorry? My flight. Is there still a flight to Thunder Bay today? Neil pulled out his phone. His fingers moved. There's if you'd like I can. I can personally rebook you, there won't be any charge, and I'll make sure that's fine, Jarvis said. Neil nodded. He stood there for a moment longer than he needed to. Your dog, he said finally. What's his name? Boone. Neil looked at Boone. Boone regarded Neil with a calm and complete absence of judgment, the way animals look at people when they've already decided you're not a threat and have moved on to other things. Boone, Neil repeated. He seemed to want to say something else. He didn't find it. He nodded again and walked away. Barbara appeared at Jarvis's elbow. She had finished her coffee. She was pulling on her gloves with the brisk efficiency of someone who had places to be and was not going to let a foiled bombing disrupt her schedule any more than it already had. Are you going to be all right, she said. I'm fine, Jarvis said. Your dog is very good. He is. She looked at Boone one more time, the kind of look that people give to things that have surprised them, that have shown them something they didn't expect the world to still contain. Then she patted Jarvis once on the arm, the way mothers do, or grandmothers, or the kind of stranger, to know when a gesture enough of life, to know when a gesture is appropriate and not care whether it's presumptuous. Thank your mother for raising you right, she said, and thank whoever trained that dog. She walked away toward the rerouted boarding gates, her red coat moving through the crowd, and Jarvis watched her go. The 3:15 to Thunder Bay was half full. Jarvis got a window seat. Boone settled at his feet without being asked, his chin on his front paws, his breathing slow and even. Somewhere over the boreal forest north of Lake Winnipeg, Jarvis watched the landscape below. The dark geometry of spruce and pine and frozen muskeg, the rivers tracing their way through it like something had pressed a thumb into wet clay. He had been in places where the land was the color of dust, and the air smelled like exhaust and fear. He had been in places where the landscape told you nothing, except that it didn't care whether you survived it. This landscape below him was different. It was the kind of landscape that people grew up in and left and spent the rest of their lives missing, without entirely understanding why. He thought about Sergeant Patel's voice saying, roughly 2 hours and 18 minutes on that timer. He thought about how a terminal full of people, the suit with the coffee, the teenager with the headphones, the family with the stroller, and the toddler with opinions, had walked past that alcove, for however long that bag had been sitting there, and none of them had known, and all of them had been safe, and the only reason they were safe was because a dog had lifted his nose at the right angle in the right moment, and done exactly what he had been taught to do. Boone shifted slightly at his feet, resettled, exhaled. Jarvis put his hand down. Boone's head moved under it without prompting. There is a particular kind of person who does what Jarvis did, who spends years learning to move through danger without flinching, who gives those years without announcement, and returns without fanfare, and asks for nothing except to be left alone, to live quietly. The world does not always know what to do with such people. Sometimes it mistakes their stillness for vacancy, their simplicity for lack of depth, their reluctance to explain themselves for something suspicious. The world is not always right about the things it thinks it knows. Boone slept the rest of the way to Thunder Bay. His paws moved slightly. Once, the way dogs' paws move when they are running in whatever country they visit when they close their eyes. When they landed, Jarvis's mother was waiting at the arrival's gate, even though he hadn't called. She was wearing the blue sweater he'd sent her 2 Christmases ago, and she had the look she always had when she saw him. Not relief exactly, but the particular releasing of something she had been holding without admitting she was holding it. She looked at Boone. Boone looked at her. "This is him?" she said. "This is him," Jarvis said. She crouched down, a thing she did slowly now, in the way that people do things slowly when they're pinions, and she held her hand out flat, the way you're supposed to, the way most people don't bother to do, and Boone leaned forward and touched his nose to her palm. She laughed, just once, short and quiet, the way people laugh when something has caught them off guard in a good way. "Hello, Boone," she said. The narrator will leave them there, mother and son and dog, in the arrivals hall of the Thunder Bay Airport. The fluorescent lights humming above them, the winter dark pressing against the glass doors. Some stories end with an explosion avoided. Some end with a wrong made right. Some end with a person who was dismissed and doubted walking quietly out the other side of it, unchanged in the ways that matter. This one ends with a dog touching his nose to an old woman's hand. That is enough. It is more than enough.